Hi, everyone. Before I start this particular video, I should preface it by saying that consider me an unreliable narrator. I'm going to talk about certain things as if they were fact. They're not necessarily true. They may be embellished. They may be cut out of whole cloth. But I want to tell these things because of the story, not necessarily because the details are completely correct, historically correct. This is about how I became a writer and perhaps almost didn't become a writer, or debatably whether or not I really am a writer. Now, I began writing about age 9 or 10 or so, and how that all began is a whole story unto itself. I had an old typewriter that was manual from another country. It did have the letters A through Z with a couple extras thrown in, and then some of the letters were transposed. And in order to use the thing, depending on how hard you hit each key, that in turn would show how much the letter would imprint on the piece of paper. So to use the darn thing, you really had to have some pretty strong fingers. Yet I'd be clacking away at that thing, trying to spin up a tale of all sorts of fantastical stuff. I loved fantasy and whatever went with that, magic and horror and post-apocalyptic science fiction and who knows what else. It was all, as long as it wasn't the real world, I liked it. I had a tenuous relationship with the real world. So when I was going through high school and it came time to get thinking about university, I really didn't see any other thing that I wanted to do but to be a writer. And that's what I told my dad, who was kind, I think, about it, kind enough not to laugh it off. My brother was more skeptical. He asked, like, what are you going to be, the next Stephen King? Which, in hindsight, that was a valid question. Yet I didn't know what else I was going to do with myself. I kind of knew I could do some technology things, but I didn't really know where I wanted to go. So I knew I could write and that I liked to write, so why not? Anyway, I got to the college placement exams or pre-college placement exams where they figure out what you might exempt from, and I took the freshman college essay test. And well, they put me in general population, so I guess they weren't suitably impressed at what I wrote, which may not be surprising because my handwriting is completely atrocious. And so it could just be whatever essay thing I wrote about that it was incomprehensible. And they couldn't figure out what I was trying to say. So, whatever the reason, I did not exempt out of freshman English. And I was thrown into a class where the teacher was, let's say, into poetry and intensely political. And I was neither and anything but. So as the class went on, it became clear that we were oil and water. It was just not happening between us. The teacher would give us an assignment to write about something that was absurd, that was a parody, that was over the top. And so I would come out with some sort of post-apocalyptic science fiction thing and put a lot of effort into it. And it had no value. I'd get back a paper saying, talk to me after class. What the hell is this? What are you trying to pull? So I guess it should be parody, but parody within reality, not something that was a step further away from what the teacher was comfortable reading. And this was just, we were worlds apart. I was, swords and sorcery, and she was not. She was politics and reality. So the semester went on, and my papers were graded badly. Teacher and I did not see eye to eye. I keep putting more effort into it, figuring sooner or later that person's got to like something. I've got to just get the formula right. and then I gave up. And by giving up, I mean that the week before I had to turn in what particular paper, I got a call from my mom. She was having some real issues with her condo. She lived in a place that was adjacent to another college, and the place where she lived was packed full of hoodlums. And by hoodlums, I mean wealthy college kids that went to a very expensive, exclusive university who spent all of their spare time partying like crazy and not giving a damn about anybody else. And they put her through the ringer. So she was having a hard time. And I went by bus. It was about a 2-hour bus trip to visit her for the evening and stay overnight. And we had a talk about the things that were happening. She got to vent. We shared about life and everything. And when I got back, I had an essay due in English class, and I thought, I don't know what else to write about. I give up. I'll just write about what happened. So I talked about getting the call, going to visit, and at the end of the talk, well, I'd finished my dinner. So I wrote as the last sentence, and then I finished everything that was left on my plate. And the teacher loved it. And maybe that's in part because it took to task wealthy college kids who were partying. There could be other reasons too, whatever the reason. She loved it and saw it as having particular meanings. That is, in the end, writing about, and then I finished what was left on my plate, being some sort of symbolism for seeing what was left in my life and taking stock of that and moving forward. And that got into a debate with some of the kids in the class where they thought that that was overreach of what I'd actually meant. So they turned to me and said, well, what did you mean by that? And of course, I had meant no symbolism other than I finished off what was left on my plate. We talked, and then I had the rest of my dinner. And that was that. So the teacher did not appreciate that. And we were right back where things started. So, come to the end of the semester, I received what at this university was called a BC, so B minus C plus grade. Just not very good at all. Not something that an aspiring writer would expect to get. Funnily enough, there was somebody else who was deeply political who managed to pull off an AB or A minus B plus grade. He wasn't a writer, he just happened to know that it was politically astute to agree with whatever the teacher wanted to have done, match the agenda and get a good grade. So, in that respect, it did teach me a lot about writing to your audience. So, the upshot of all of this, I don't know what happened to that teacher. I guess I did become a writer, but not any sort of a writer that lives by creative writing. I'm no Stephen King, but I do manage a turn of the phrase, and I get to do some creative endeavors within the limits of the guardrails of what my occupation is all about. And for that, I'm grateful. So, in that respect, I do write. I was a journalist for a while, and that did not exactly pay, but or at least pay well. But again, it was an opportunity to maybe not speak with my own voice, or speak to some extent with my own voice, but to tell the tales that other people need told. And so, in that respect, has it been a success? Has it been a failure? Yes, yes to both. It's been an adventure and an interesting one, but I did not become the writer that I had perhaps originally aspired to be. And I realize that now perhaps I will never, or very likely I will never be that writer. Still, I write.